think we need to give you the tallest.
Okay, hello everybody, how are you?
Yeah!
And 1, 2.
I was waiting for the world to change. So, where do we start?
You and I having a really great call you because you're the greatest artist rep around, and you've never taken any idea as too crazy or too strange. You always listen to whatever is going through my mind, or you help me kind of figure out why I would ask a certain thing, and then you go straight to the development stage of an idea. There's not that much hanging around before we start working.
Well, we started working in 2003, I think, and we developed a beautiful guitar together. And what John brings to the table that nobody else does is that he went to art school.
No, I didn't.
Didn't you?
No.
But did you go to grade school?
No. No, I went to Berklee College of Music, as everyone here working at NAMM did. And I went for a year and took off.
But you have such an art sense and such an art background. I mean, everything that I see that you do, every suggestion you make. The first model that we did had a beautiful silver inlay around the headstock,
yeah.
Around the bridge. These were all ideas that John brought to the table. A lot of times, artists that I work with, they bring themselves to the table. They don't necessarily bring any ideas, and we have to fill in the ideas for them. But that's not the case with John. We've done the first limited edition OM28 John Mayer, which was 404 guitars, and they sold like that. They're beautiful guitars, and you're still playing those.
Yeah, I still have the same too, you know.
And then we followed up with kind of the, what do we call it, the poor man's John Mayer model?
Oh, come on. The more accessible model.
Yes, the more accessible model, which is the OMJN.
No, it's the poor man's.
And that's a beautiful guitar, and even the case is beautiful. It's got JCM monogram on it.
You know, I still think there's room to grow in the sort of aesthetic of a guitar. I don't think it's done yet. I don't think we've seen every combination or every iteration of a guitar design, and so I pick up things that I see. Like I remember seeing, I think the monogram came from seeing this JFK auction where his golf bags in an interesting way, and I called you. I said, how do you know?
I wanted to know what the C stood for.
Yes, classiness. Yeah, always, at all times. At all times.
Clayton, right?
Consistency and classiness. Yeah, Clayton.
John Clayton Mayer.
But in the monogram, the C was in the middle, and the last name is on the right.
Yeah, just like that. Yeah. So, in this, you know, every different size and shape of guitar brings something new to the table. Martin made guitars in the 1800s that were referred to as. The reason they were parlor guitars is because they were often played by women. The ladies would have tea. They would perform on the guitar for the members of the tea group, and they became known as parlor guitars. They were small, and they were actually called women's guitars. And now yours is not a woman's guitar.
No, it's a unisex model. We made sure we went through the specs, and should have seen R&D for that one.
Well, the thing is that the little guitars are just fantastic for songwriting. We played around with names of the guitar.
For a long time, yeah. Well, you know, I should go back a little bit in terms of the idea for the guitar. Every time I go into a new record, there's a sort of a new aesthetic that comes in, and I can't help it. It's not forced. It's just I pick up something else I get passionate about. I see an image I get passionate about, and I want to delve into it. And this time around, the last couple of years, I've gravitated towards the double O model, or even the triple O model, or the O model, and I thought there was something interesting. You normally see the smaller a guitar gets, the more inexpensive it gets. As the guitar scales down in size, you start losing appointments to the guitar. You start losing details.
And people think that a smaller guitar would have a smaller sound.
Yeah, and
it's not true.
It's economy, and I thought, you know, for the same reason we love watches and we love small. We love the iPod. We love the iPad. Small and dense with design. You know, it doesn't take up a lot of space, but it fits in your hand, and there's no wasted area in it. And where the Stagecoach edition comes into play is that I'm sort of a dreamer, crazy dreamer. Everything's a fantasy to me. And I sort of had this idea of this false history, this fictional history of a guitar, this sort of guy. What would a guitar look like by a cowboy who was traveling by stagecoach, or you know, a businessman traveling by stagecoach who wanted a guitar to play, but also didn't want to spare any expense.
Well, you see them, and that was the case. That was the case. Guitars were delivered by Wells Fargo and Pony Express, and by railroad to Boston and Philadelphia and Chicago, and so that's really the heyday of these traditional guitars.
The idea is, and this is a little bit of where the idea came from, so I have to be honest with myself about it. The idea comes from a little bit of, like, you could see someone walking into like the pawn shop. I have this Martin guitar. And the expert comes in and he says, "Oh yes, this is a 0045 SC. This was actually made by a, you know, or commissioned by a very wealthy businessman who at the time was just investing in textiles, and he wanted to spare no expense. And as you see, it's got blue power all."
Rogers.
Yeah.
Or Roy Rogers.
Yeah, when it's broken now. No, it's
That's what the binding to protect the guitar from dents.
I think that a signature guitar, which this really isn't because it doesn't have my signature on it, but it's, I sort of signed it more as the designer of the you know, the inventor of the idea of the guitar. But a good signature model is your favorite specs. You can't just say, well, I've always liked this neck, and I've always liked, and I've always liked this bridge, and let's just put them together so I have the best of everything that I want. It doesn't really work that way. This is about finding a sort of center of gravity to a design, the next thing and everything all at once. And so the neck is true to spec, the slotted headstock is true to spec. You know, there's a few liberties, but for the most part, you pick up the guitar and it's not a hybrid of anything other than being a 0045 with an aesthetic to it, with a design build, you know, sort of build to it that is really inspiring when you play it. It's really, it's got something with otherwise. I think.
Yeah, that's what Mark Knopfler said when he got his guitar. He wrote a whole album.
Yeah.
And what an honor to have that happen. Maybe that'll happen with this. He said songs out.
Yeah, it's an inspiring thing, and I think, you know, there's only 25 of them, but I think it's going to inspire people to pick up. You know, it's a 12-fret model with no cutaway. I think a lot of guitar players look at a 12-fret model with no cutaway as a very limiting sort of an instrument. And I think in tandem where music is going to a much more, I think it's going to go back, and my bet, I'm certainly putting my chips down on it being a more organic, natural, it's about, it has to, right? It's the next step, it has to, the circle has to come around again. Going back to lyrics and chords and simplicity, but not dumb simplicity, but artful simplicity. I think this is sort of the guitar that turns the tide a little bit, where you don't have to, you don't need a cutaway, you don't need 19 frets of access. You know, the songs are here. The songs for this guitar are right here. You know? And people have been doing just fine with them for many, many years right here. So.
Well, this is Adirondack spruce top. Cocobolo, beautiful, beautiful Cocobolo.
Look at that.
Wood from Central America.
We'll start the bidding at 5,000. Also, every guitar we've done together has had some sort of aesthetic to it that hasn't been done before.
Right.
The original OM 28JM had a mother of pearl inlay on the bridge. That I think you had a couple of bridges you had to throw away.
Oh yeah, it was very difficult. He always gives us difficult things to do. Yeah. And then watch.
Yeah, it had the pilot's triangle, right. And the idea is to get someone who is not a fan, either by way of not digging what I do or just not really knowing what I do, to look at the guitar and go, I still want that guitar. This is not for John Mayer fans. None of my guitars have been expressly for fans of mine. They've been for guitar lovers. And maybe that's part of my evil plan to get everyone to like me.
Well, you know, we do like you, and even though we like you so much, it doesn't mean a hoot to have a guitar with John Mayer's signature in it if the guitar is not fantastic. And so the challenge here is doing justice to John's and to deliver a tool that will yield songs and produce great music. That's all it's about.
We haven't gotten to the coolest, so with that is sort of the coolest aspect of the guitar. I called Dick and I said, Dick, you know how the mother of pearl goes around, would you call that the rosette?
The rosette?
The rosette. You know how the rosette always stops at the neck? And I later found out it actually does go on, but it goes on underneath the neck. They actually lay in the whole circle, but then put the neck over it. I said, what if it kept going? And the only way, that's what's great about Dick, the only way to find out if it works or not is to do it. And it worked, and it's gorgeous, and I don't know if you can see from there, I think you can, that the mother to make a complete circle, which
it's not an easy thing to do either. In order to do this, the neck has to be, the dovetail and everything has to be fit perfectly in place, glued, and actually fit. The guitar has to be finished without the last couple of frets going in. And then by hand, you have to match up the arc, the radius, which is actually a slightly different radius than the actual rosette. I bet you didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
It's a slightly different radius because of the arch or curvature of the fingerboard. And so this was the first one we did was kind of excruciating, and now we're getting better at it. And it's being done individually by hand by one person. So
this is beyond a signature model. I think this goes into special order.
Yeah.
This is like, there's only 25, and it's not supposed to be fully accessible. That's what's great, is that, you know, for someone who doesn't have the access or the funds, there's still a guitar out there for them. But this is really about a collector's, art, an artisan mindset, and it's really it's almost like a special order, but in a quantity of 25. You know?
25 very special people. Actually 23 because John's getting 2 of them.
One to play, one to store. That's my rule.
Well, I know that it's just a box with a neck on it and some wire attached to it until you actually play. Do you think that?
Yeah, if you want to bring the microphone there.
That's cool.